That's what the Bhagavatam explains to us. Persons between them suffer the material pangs. Why? Because you're smart enough, but you're not smart enough. So we're stuck. And the only way to go is up, because that's the nature of knowledge, is once it's realized, it can't be covered up. Once you realize the truth, you have no real alternative other than to move forward, because you're not actually able to choose to believe something. Our beliefs are held at an intrinsic level. Our beliefs are not, they're not something we can whimsically decide, oh, now I believe this. We become convinced of something. And when we become convinced of that thing or by that thing, our entire worldview changes based on that convincing. So we're stuck in a position of you either move forward or you're going to suffer, which is a beautiful position to be in, because that's a very nice impetus, even on my lowest days, to know that actually the only way to go is forward. There is no backward. I can't go backward. Bhakti is apratihita. Bhakti can't be destroyed. And anyway, even on a practical level, I can't unconvince myself of the things that I have realized. I can pretend that they don't exist, but that pretending will just create a kind of schism in my consciousness, where I know all along what I need to be doing, and I'm trying to forget that, but all the while I won't be able to forget it. Therefore, we won't be able to enjoy. I remember this before, because when I was partying and doing all these things started to come to me. I was reading books and I started to realize this is pointless. And then I tried for years. Oh, let me just set that aside. Anyway, I can still do this, but I couldn't do it anymore. And it came to a breaking point where I realized I can't enjoy this anymore. This isn't going to work for me any longer. I have to put some hard work in now to actually move towards these things which I've gained as ideals. There was no question of not believing them. So this is really where we find ourselves. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a scary thing, and it's frustrating, because many times our lower selves get the best of us, and then we think, God, if I could just, things would be so much more simple if I could just undo this. But we don't want that. Krishna is not going to let that happen, actually. Krishna always holds us to the standard of our higher selves, because that's what we want to be seen by. We want to be recognized by our sincerity, no? We don't want to be judged for our lower actions. We want to be recognized by the higher aspirations that we have, because indeed that's actually who we are. When one is not acting on their higher aspirations, then they're not really, practically speaking, an eternal individual. They're only individual in an ontological sense. But when you're not acting on your higher aspirations, or when you don't even realize them, then your eternality is just a fact that you have no real realization of. Somebody tumbling through samsara life after life, they don't know that they're eternal, and they also don't experience that they're eternal. They experience that they're temporary, and therefore their whole life is governed by the idea that they're going to die, and the idea that they were born, and therefore they may not even question that, the way that works. But when we actually have some realization, when we actually get some knowledge that, again, once we realize it, changes our conceptual orientation completely, then we can say, I'm actually eternal, because then we're actually cognizant of it and we start to act like that. So we want to be held to the standard of our highest aspirations. We want to be taken for those things. Everybody wants to be appreciated for who they desire to be, and nobody wants to be held to the standard of their failings. And indeed, this is what Krishna sees. He says this, yoga kshemam vahamyam, I carry what you lack, I preserve what you have. He sees what we're aspiring for, and he encourages us constantly to simply aspire for that. Don't worry. What is that? The first verse everybody learns. Oh my gosh, my brain's not working this morning. And there we go. Lokaram knows it. Sarvadharman prityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. Aham tam sarvapapevyo mokshayashyami ma shuchaha. Ma shuchaha. Do not fear. Mokshayashyami. I will free you from all the problems of what you've done in the past. I will keep you clear even from the things that you fall into while you're trying to practice bhakti. Krishna says this in the 11th canto. He says, my devotee, this is 11, 20, 28, and 29. He realizes he's not a controller, anishvarad, which means he's not even able to control himself. And he gives into terrible things, which he's compelled to do against his will, by his nature, by the previous samskars. Hey, Haribol. Hey, Janaki. No. which he's compelled to do by his previous nature. These terrible things. But still, the devotee realizes, anyway, the only thing I can do is continue to do bhakti. So we slip, we trip, we fall, we do all these things, but we need to just realize, I just need to do bhakti. I just need to continue doing the sadhana that I've been given, and eventually that is going to be the thing that effectuates the change in heart that I'm looking for, that allows me to connect with my higher self at every moment, rather than being dictated by the whims of my lower self, which is really the mind. It's not actually who I am. It's just a conglomeration of a lot of experiences that I've had that keep poking me and keep saying, hey, we used to do this. Do you remember this? Do you remember this? Do you remember the blue deck? Do you remember that? So this is this kind of stuff we have to keep in mind. Krishna keeps us to task, which is actually a very, very beautiful thing, because he keeps us right line, reminding us that this is actually what you want. And he steps in even a little bit greedily, one can say, in taking away all of the things that are going to get in the way of that. Because once one starts doing bhakti, then Krishna is also, he has a vested interest, because the devotees have recommended this person to Krishna. And so then Krishna takes it very seriously. My devotees like you. I also like you. He says this Bhakta Jana Priya in the 9th canto. He says, what to speak of my devotees? Those people who are dear to my devotees, they're also dear to me. So then he starts to do this. He says, I like you. And so I'm going to treat you a little bit special. And what's the first thing he does? Yes, all right, we're gonna shake you up a little bit so you can also see how special you are. Because you're thinking you're special, but you're thinking you're special in the wrong way. So let's show you how you're actually special. So again, this stuff is a little scary, but we have to get the whole message, because the whole message is very sweet. It's very, very nice. Because I have to realize that if it was up to me, I wouldn't move an inch. I would sit right where I am and just keep trying to have fun. Right? We just keep trying. Krishna's nice, but I can just, he's giving, and then we'll make so many philosophies. Well, Krishna's given me this thing, and Krishna's given me that thing, and he's really taking care of me, so I should stay right here. That's really what we're justifying ourselves to, is here is nice. But Krishna is not interested in here is nice. Krishna wants us to move forward. He wants us to keep walking. So he very nicely comes behind us with a stick, like a father, and says, yeah, you need to walk forward. Go now. What are you doing? That's not good for you. It's not nice. That's not a good thing. Little children, they pick up and they eat dirt. But they can't just eat dirt all day. They can't keep eating dirt. It's not even actually tasty. There's nothing nice about that. There's nothing good there. So we're all Krishna's little children, actually, because his bigger children have come and said, hey, you should like this one. And so somehow we've been introduced to this philosophy, and we've been introduced to this process. So we should move in this way. So tying it back in to the verse at hand, devotees aren't able to experience material existence in the same way. Material existence actually becomes disgusting to them. It's like a spectrum, so it's not fully disgusting, but it becomes something that is not enjoyable because one gets an experience of something higher. And then Krishna also helps from behind. And he says, come on, move towards the nice thing, move towards the nice thing, move towards the nice thing. So that was a bit disjointed. I had a little fun with it, though. I'm happy you guys were here. We got some magic time. I don't know if there are any comments, questions, thoughts. Ooh, I'll meet you halfway.
Okay. What a guy. I really appreciated this class because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, like how from about 4 years ago I had this like irrational anger towards God. Like, what God would put me through what I've been through? Would like make me like a childless, like multiple rape survivor, like just all the unmentionable things in my life. Like, what kind of God would do that? And coming into Krishna consciousness by the grace of Bhana, her bullying me into Krishna consciousness, which I'm thankful for, it helped me also to realize, like, having that appreciation that, God isn't this like vengeful, like, dude sitting on a white cloud beating you with a stick. There's that sweetness to it, like you're you're saying that, he's also taking care of you. Like Krishna knows, like I am, when it comes to like addictive behavior, I take the cake. Like I take all of the cake. Like all of it. It's bad. And everything that's come into my life, I've been addicted to. Relationships, unhealthy relationships, like self-destructive behavior, like just every addiction that's bad you can have, I've done it and I've been a part of it. And as soon as Vana started giving me prasadam, it's like, oh, cigarettes make me puke now and have panic attacks. Oh, I can't do drugs anymore because they give me panic attacks. Like, oh, I can't have these friends anymore because now they want nothing to do with me. It's like random out of the blue. All of these things were happening. And at the time, I was really confused and angry. Like, dude, like I'm trying to have fun here. I'm trying to. This is my program. But then coming into Krishna consciousness and learning. And reading about this brings of gratitude towards it. Because without Krishna busting my chops a little bit and taking away the bad friends and not letting me, throw myself into the self-destructive behavior, and now I'm able to, replace it with service and being a good wife and being a good friend and recognizing what's healthy, what isn't, all of that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Karamji. Should have turned this around. I'm not.
We were listening in the car on the way over, and I appreciated your points. It was a really nice discussion. But this point about bhakti being the most difficult, that actually we were tricked. I wanted to say a little bit in defense of bhakti, because it's true everything you said, but also to remember, we should remember that even though the process is very difficult, in fact, Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu lists one of the qualities of bhakti as sudurlabha, very difficult to attain. Still, the next quality he lists is Sri Krishna Akarshani, that it's the only process by which you can actually attract the all attractive. So, we should remember that if it is difficult, then it's because it's the only process by which you can actually become more than God.
Yes.
To become a servant of God, particularly in this Krishna consciousness movement of Lord Chaitanya, you actually become more than God. And becoming equal to God, or moksha, liberation in Haman, is very easily given by bhakti. Even chanting the holy name of Krishna, like a shadow or a semblance of the name, gives liberation. So,
do you have? I'm just curious about this because Jai and I were talking about this the other day, and we weren't able to find anything. Do you know of a place where it's said that Namabas can give moksha?
in the Chaitanya Charitamrita,
Haridas Thakur and Gopal
Yeah.
Chapala. So
Yeah.
the way, if you go back and read that, it seems that what is being said there is freedom from karma, but not moksha as in liberation. So I'm curious to find more, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur seems to say something about this in is it Bhakti Tattva Vivek? But as far as like a shastra, a verse for that, I've never seen it, and I've always seen it gives freedom from bondage of material existence. So I'm curious if you can find a reference.
He said, the way I remember it is he says that if it doesn't give liberation, I'll cut off my nose.
Yeah.
Maybe like you're saying, maybe he's referring to freedom from sinful reactions.
Yeah. See, that's what it seemed like. We investigated.
Yeah. Another place we could look at is the pastime of Ajamila.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, that was the point that I brought up, that Ajamil actually, by Namabas, he got liberated from the reaction of the Yamadutas. Then he went and did sadhana, and then he got moksha.
Yeah.
But he didn't, it wasn't like Namabas, come with me.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that was my thought there.
Well, it requires some further investigation.
Yeah.
We'll look into it a little bit.
Anyway, not to
At
side
least-
your point,
No, it's all right. It's all right. It's good that
because your point is very nice.
It should be investigated. It's like gold. You don't just, oh, thanks for the gold. You should investigate and see what it actually is. So, at the very least, we hear that for the devotee, karma and gyan, or material happiness and liberation follow like maid servants.
Yes.
So for the devotee, these other things are attained very, very easily.
Yes.
And whatever progress we make in bhakti, we carry with us lifetime after lifetime.
Mhm.
It cannot be destroyed. Whereas on any other path, whatever you do, if you don't complete it, maybe something you carry with you, like some scars and so on. But in terms of material happiness, you don't get to take any of that with you.
Yeah.
You do so many yagyas and whatever to become a billionaire, and then in your next life you start from zero again. So it's helpful to remember that it may be the most difficult process because it's like climbing the highest mountain, traversing the mountain of our false ego. But it's the only process that will yield the result that we really want.
Yeah.
So there's no need for feeling discouraged or like, Krishna should have made it easier.
Yeah.
Because actually he does make it very, very easy in terms of what we have to do. It's very simple, straightforward, not complicated, but the actual doing it is what's challenging.
Mm.
Having the faith and the surrender, the sincerity to just apply ourselves. Right.
Beautiful. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you so much for the class. I was thinking about you're saying this point that Krishna is trying to prod us, like this is not the place, this is not the place.
Yeah.
And I've been so much feeling that lately in so many different ways. But I was just talking with Mother Dynamite yesterday, maybe I can't remember. Yesterday, the day before, and we were just discussing how it's like there's always, even you come to Krishna consciousness and you have the devotee association, but still that sentiment lingers that somehow I'm going to make this my home, and somehow with the devotees, now that we're all devotees together, we can make this material world a happy place. And it's like to really recognize like material world, like you said, devotee is a perpetual optimist, but not materially.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys, if it resonates, you have the experience with that devotees, I personally at least carry this mentality of like, but somehow there's optimism in my material prospects, and it's just not the case. So just to that sobering point that, yes, we have devotee association, but we're meant to carry that out of here, not develop something nice here. It's never going to happen. I mean, if it happens, it will be temporary.
Nice. Yeah. So I have a couple little reflections. Especially, I'd like to kind of flush out your point, Lokaram. So, yeah. I'm so technologically inept that even when it's not technologically oriented, I mess it up. So I just want to bang on your point a little more because it's a beautiful point that, like you said, if you're climbing the highest mountain, then the result is you're standing on top of the highest mountain. So it's the most difficult to climb the tallest mountain. Naturally, it's going to be the most difficult of all the mountains you can climb, but then you're on top of the highest one. So the work is concomitant, and actually it's not concomitant because the mountain is much higher than the work you actually have to put in to climb it. That's the kind of paradoxical nature of bhakti. But the work is concomitant to the goal that you're going to receive for the work. So naturally, it's going to be the most difficult thing because it's the most superlative thing that we stand to gain through this gift that we've been given of bhakti. So as you said, bhakti is sudurlabha. This is in reference to bhav bhakti. It's very difficult to get bhav bhakti. Extremely difficult. So much so that even if one practices with asakti, Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, for a long, long time, comes all the way to the stage of asakti, still Krishna is like I don't know. And then finally, after you show that you want it, he gives it. Because it's such an intimate thing. You're talking about God handing you the keys to his heart. You know, he gives muktim dadati karichet smana bhakti yogam. He gives mukti, he gives some bhukti, he gives some, because these things are easy for him to give because he has them in an unlimited quantity. But his heart, he has to give the whole thing when he gives it to somebody. And he's able to give his whole heart to many people, but still he's giving his whole heart to somebody. And therefore, this Sri Krishna Akarshani. The next one is Sandrananda Visheshatma, that it gives full fulfillment of the soul, and then Sri Krishna Akarshani. Prema completely controls Krishna. He's addicted to prema. So when somebody has prema, then Krishna can't say no. He can no longer say no. I'm very charmed by some examples that I've heard about this. So you're doing the Gita class. So you know Krishna is the charioteer of Arjuna.
Mhm.
Do you know what it means to be a charioteer in Vedic times?
No.
So he rides in front of the general who actually commands the chariot. And they're in a war.
Mhm.
And Arjuna has to chant mantras because when he's shooting arrows, he imbues them with mantras in order to make them powerful, because these guys fight in a totally different way than we have conceptualized. It's like the coolest movie you've ever seen. So there's this war, there's swords clashing, like crazy imbued arrows are flying, and one arrow turns into 1,000 arrows. It's a cacophony of sound. So Arjuna isn't able to say, Krishna, go left, Krishna, go right, Krishna, stop. So here's how a general communicates to the charioteer. If he wants to go left, he kicks the charioteer in the left side. If he wants to go right, he kicks him in the right side. If he wants him to stop, he places his foot in between his shoulder blades. That's how a charioteer communicates, and a general communicates to his charioteer. This is what Arjuna was doing to Sri Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. This is the bond of love between Krishna and his devotee. This is what Partha Sarati means. This is Krishna showing, I love my devotee so much, I'm willing to become his charioteer. And Arjuna was doing this, why? Because he's covered by Yogamaya, he doesn't know Krishna's God. In that moment, he's my friend, he's my cousin, he's my charioteer. This is the beauty of the control that Krishna hands over to his loving devotees. Mother Yashoda, if Krishna wants to sleep in, and Mother Yashoda comes and says, hey Kanai, you have to get up. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, because Krishna doesn't get up for Mangalarti. But he does have to get up finally to go and milk the cows and then take his breakfast and get up. She says, you have to get up. Krishna can't say, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, I'm going to sleep in today. No, his mother will drag him out of bed. He has to get up. Sri Krishna Akarshani. Krishna is completely controlled by his devotee. His devotee is also completely controlled by him, so it's not some torturous thing, because that's love. It's a two-way street. That priti flows in both directions. But this is what every sadhaka stands to get, and this is why the difficulty is there. And then you brought up another point about this difficulty, which I really like, that bhakti is apratihata. So this was what I was highlighting, actually, that you can't just give up bhakti because it's apratihata. It was given to you, and therefore you didn't do anything to get it. You also can't do anything to get rid of it. So life after life, it's going to chase you. This is, in my humble opinion, this is what Prabhupada was saying when he said, it's the most difficult thing, but what to do? You've started and now you can't stop, because it's going to chase you. You're stuck in this interim period where you're not a fool and you're not a paramahamsa, and the only choice is to move forward, because you can't get away from it. Karma gyan, you can say, I'm done with this. And then you die and none of that stays, and you go and I can enjoy again. But as a bhakta, from now on, if you take another birth, you're like, man, I feel like I need to do something. I feel like there's something I'm not, why isn't this fulfilling? And you're going to be in an existential crisis until you come to the state of completion. So this is a very beautiful thing. It's a little scary, but it's very beautiful. And Madhavi, I really appreciate your point about the realism of a devotee, that we understand that life can be very, very nice insofar as it pertains to sadhana bhakti, insofar as it means coming together with the devotees, relishing Krishna Katha, having deep relationships with them, but realizing that that doesn't mean that my material life is going to be prosperous. It doesn't mean that, and actually it usually means the opposite. Because not only do we have the fact that the material world is a degrading place constantly, but we also have the fact that Krishna is there with a stick, kind of stirring up the things that we're trying to become complacent and settled into. And this is something that I think all of us experience on some level or another. It's something that every honest devotee is going to come up against. And if you don't, then that means you're really, really pure, and I fold my hands to you. But my general understanding is that if something good comes my way, I should look at it a little sideways and say, how can I use this for service? Because if I become a little attached to it, it's usually a trick to show me that that attachment is there so that Krishna can then pull the rug and then, yeah, see, you're looking for the wrong thing. What is that? One last thing and then I'll stop because we're already at 52 minutes, and then if there are any final reflections or thoughts. Krishna says 5:19:27. He says, if my devotees worship me and they still have a desire for material things, I give it to them. But I give it to them in such a way they don't want it anymore. And then by the time we get it, we think, this isn't how I wanted it, and you keep running into a different version of that. Well, this isn't what I wanted the way I wanted it. All right, well, this is the way I wanted it, but it's not exactly what I wanted. And so that's how it works. This is what Krishna does. And slowly, 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 he's breaking this idea that, oh, this is what I need. And then we realize, actually, the only thing I need is my sadhana and sangha with the devotees. Even more so than my sadhana, sangha with the devotees is the most cherished thing. This is the most important thing. So that's what it comes down to. I don't know if there are any concluding things, Kishore.
I was listening to the lecture from Srimad a couple months ago, and he was talking about suffering in the material world, and the big question of why is there suffering, why is there so much pain, and all these kind of things. And he gave a really nice answer, and he said that it's because it's meant to convince us that we're not supposed to be here. That otherwise we have no reason to leave.
Yeah.
If everything was nice, we would never leave. And most likely we would make it very far.
I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't.
So yeah, the suffering that we experience in the material world is meant to finally convince us that we really don't want to be here anymore. And the complacency is like, when there's a kind of like a lull in some suffering. That's how I experience it.
Yeah.
There's like a lull in the suffering. You're like, I've been suffering a while. Things are looking up,
We're like,
Things are
oh,
looking up.
things are going nice,
And then it's like, okay, you have to kind of go through the grinder again. And so I was thinking about how in Christian consciousness, there's always a unique perspective on everything, kind of material existence. And if we're able to see it in the right way, somehow or other, it always ends up pushing us closer to Krishna, which is obviously the point. And so I think that's the kind of unique thing about Christian consciousness, and in the way of every experience or everything that happens to us being an element of Krishna's hand in our life. Because everything starts to become a way for us to get closer to Krishna, if we can see it in that way. And even if we can't see it in that way, Krishna still makes the arrangement for us somehow or other, whether we're deserving or undeserving, to find our way back into at least the association of devotees, and then eventually back into our cognizant relationship with Krishna. So I was thinking about that, and that I always find that to be very kind of like a solace,
Yes.
because life in the material world is pretty terrible, and so and then it's like when you come to the point of realizing how much you don't want to be in the material world anymore, but then it's like, again, we're in that weird interim stage where we don't necessarily have enough attachment to Krishna to really leave all the other things behind. And so it requires that kind of active taking shelter of Krishna. I think that's when our spiritual life starts to become very profound, and and we see how so many examples of that moment when the devotee finally takes complete shelter of Krishna, and Krishna is always there. So it's like we can't. I think sometimes, at least for myself, I tend to underestimate how much I can take shelter of Krishna. It's kind of like we do a little bit, and then we're like, well, I didn't really experience Krishna's reciprocation, but he reciprocates according to our endeavor. So it's like we kind of have to challenge ourselves to endeavor more, and the more that we endeavor, the more we start to experience Krishna in our lives, and then at least in a more cognizant way. I think the more we become aware of Krishna in our lives, the more kind of exciting Krishna consciousness becomes. That was just thinking of that.
Really nice. I just want to share one thing because you reminded me of when you were talking about how our job is really to kind of work to see Krishna in our lives and what he's doing, and what bhakti is doing. And I was just reminded of 10:14:8, this famous verse Prabhupada would often quote. It's one of the most inspiring and compelling commentaries that Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written in the Bhagavatam to me. This in 10:88:8, which was another very favorite verse of Srila Prabhupada that he quoted quite often, and he said was basically the verse that was the reason he took sannyas, and just very, very, very powerful verse. And Sri Vishwanath in both of these verses has written 8 pages of commentary, helping to explain this very thing. And so I'll just take a little extract from that I have highlighted and I read from time to time because it's very inspiring. A devotee understands that the happiness and distress he undergoes due to performing bhakti and committing aparads are special mercy from the Lord. So this is a commentary on this. He understands while he's waiting for the mercy of the Lord, he experiences the reactions of his past duties. Because a devotee understands that devotees are not under the influence of time or karma. Where's that statement? Here, okay, I'll just keep reading. A devotee understands that the happiness and distress he undergoes due to performing bhakti and committing aparads are special mercy from the Lord. It is like the father who sometimes makes his child drink milk and sometimes make him drink bitter neem juice. Sometimes the father embraces and kisses his son, and other times he beats him. The devotee accepts whatever happens to him as the arrangement of the Lord acting for his benefit. The devotee thinks, the Lord certainly knows what is best for me, even if I don't know. Karma and time have no effect on a devotee, so this is Krishna's personal arrangement for me. Out of his mercy, Krishna sometimes gives me happiness and sometimes gives me distress, considering how to engage me in his service. I find this to be very beautiful because what this tells me is that my job is simply to see why I'm being given what I'm given. Not to worry about what I'm being given, but just to see why it's coming my way. And that's pretty much exactly what you were saying, is I have to see that, okay, this thing has come to me. What is Krishna trying to tell me? And then the more I continue to try to cultivate that and see that, then Krishna can speak in more obvious ways. Because he'll see, okay, he's actually being a little subtle now and he's actually trying to listen. Whereas previously, I wasn't listening and I was just being angry about the things that were coming my way. And so Krishna really has no choice but to shout. And what is that shouting? That shouting is cataclysm in my life. Things falling apart and just becoming horrible. But as soon as we actually turn our ear in the right direction, then Krishna says, I don't have to shout anymore. He's actually listening. He's actually trying to hear what I'm saying. So I find that very, very inspiring because that's something I really work on. I can look at the circumstances in my life, read the Bhagavatam, associate with the sadhus, and then think, wait a second. Things that happen to me, they don't just happen randomly. Whatever's coming my way. We were hearing from David Madhava about this van and then Yoga Fest. And if he wasn't listening, like he said, that van would have become a big hassle. And it basically would have become a lesson where Krishna was saying, dude, I tried to send you a message, and now because you didn't listen for that, you weren't subtle enough, what happened to you is you're dealing with a van and an extra parking space, and it's old and you have no use for it. But because David was listening, he had his ear turned 2 days later, they asked him if he could do Yoga Fest and cooking, and he put 2 and 2 together. That's why Mother Malati, oops, she's not listening. Mother Malati Prabhu gave me that van. Because Krishna wants me to go to Yoga Fest. And then because of Yoga Fest, so many people came around and they were able to pay the rent on this building for so long. But had Deva not had his ear turned, he would have gotten the opposite thing, which would have been a bunch of suffering, which would have still been Krishna's mercy, which was teaching him how to listen. So yeah, that's my thought for that. Anyway, I think we should stop. This is a good place to pause. We're already 5 minutes, 10 minutes over technically. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Vaishnava Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Mantra Kopa through this chat. Keep us in your Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo.